Well, I wanted to share an experience I had in 2004 about the shadow people. A while back, I heard a show with George on it. I didn't even know what it was until he started talking about it. Sleep paralysis and like shadow people, and like I heard like a lot of callers talking about it. What happened in 2004 with me, like I said, I'm not really into this kind of stuff. It was during the daytime. I remember, I was drinking whatever, but then it was just like I just was like laying down and like I couldn't move or anything. Then all of a sudden it just appeared in my room like some dark thing. I didn't see what it looked like. I was really scared, and I know a lot of people were like saying maybe alien stuff. I think it was like a demon or something because its presence was really scary, and I really didn't want to like talk about this or anything. I talked to a couple of friends of mine about this, and they had similar stuff. It was really kind of surreal when they were saying that they had something like that happening too. And I think that this stuff really happens a lot more than what people realize.
Well, that interesting. Now, what did the shadow person do that you saw?
Well, when it had happened, I was trying to move. I remember trying to scream. I hear myself in my mind screaming, and kind of like I was really scared. Kept trying to like close my eyes, like as though trying not to look at it. Like I said, it was like a robe or a sheet or something. I was wearing something, hooded or something. I didn't really get to see the face. I was trying not to look at it. I was really, really scared. Finally, it all stopped, and then I woke up, and a lot of people say, well, maybe it was a dream, whatever. It was during the day, and one of my friends said he thinks it's aliens or something, but he says they have the power to, like, make you paralyzed or something. That could be true because, I was wide awake, and then all of a sudden I couldn't move, but I don't think they're aliens at all. I think these are, like, demonic kind of things or something.
Well, and then you said there was alcohol involved?
Well, I had, like, a couple of beers. I was wide awake. I mean, I was not sleepy, drowsy at all.
All right. I was just checking.
Like,
Want to get the full dimension of the story, and thank you, Phil. Glad you checked in. This is not an uncommon account of people who have a wide awake moment of drowsiness. And where exactly that falls along that line, of course, that's where the debate is.
Well, Ian, I remember you talking to the twins that were psychic.
The psychic twins, you talking about Terry and Linda Jameson?
Yes, I think they're very interesting. Anyway, I'm a psychic vampire. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have. I'm wary of you.
So is George, because he knows it.
Yeah, psychic vampires aren't. It's not a healthy environment.
No, it's not, and I'm trying to pray to God to get rid of it.
Well, good. So praying is a good start, but it's also something you need to start with what caused you to be. Just like any vampire needs to find out when they originally, were turned into a psychic vampire. You got to find out what was the trigger for you.
Yes, I do. And, I've had psychiatric help and everything, and nothing seems to help.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't think they believe in psychic vampires.
Well,
I know I take energy from other people that draws them away from me.
All you have to do is ask your victims, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
they go away from me.
Well, I'm sorry. I hate the thought of you being alone. Nobody wants that. But also,
I'm not alone, and I got God and Jesus, but it's not enough
good.
Sometimes.
Well, that's good, but I say alone, meaning nobody should be without having conversation partners or people to feed back or to be in community with or whatever. But I hope that you can find some help for that in the long run, something that's going to stick because, it's a long life. And I hate to think that you've tuned everybody away and it's not too late to change. That I believe in. Hope is eternal.
When I was 18 years old, which is going back about 20 years ago.
Right.
Me and some friends were ATVing up in Wisconsin through, the trails and all that kind of stuff out in the forest, far away from any kind of other homes or anything like that would be in the area. And we stopped for a break in the middle of one of the roads that crossed, from one side of a trail to another to stop and just take a little break from riding. And we sat there for about 10 minutes or so, and all of a sudden from one side of the woods I had seen sort of a kind of a a greenish glowing little thing start coming out of the the brush and the trees and stuff. And it started to pass along the road when I got a real good look at it, and I had told a couple of the other guys that were facing the opposite direction of it. I said, "Then what the heck is that over there?" And they looked, and it's got to be about the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. I looked a little to see it looked like a baby's body, very tiny little body, passing across the road, not on the road, but walking on all four. You know how a baby would crawl.
Right.
And when they seen it, they immediately started their ATVs up and took off. And unfortunately for me, I didn't have the electric start ATV, and I was sitting there trying to pull start my ATV to get it starting with a pull start. And I got a chance to see the face of the thing as it got going to the other side of the brush, and it turned and looked, and then turned and looked away, and the face of it looked like a 100-year-old man with a very wrinkly face, and like I said, just a very little baby-sized body, and it's the strangest thing and scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. And
what would you put in the category of? I mean, what would you call that?
Boy, I don't know. Some kind of maybe some type of spirit or something, or some type of
demonic. I mean, that sort of a thing, or.
I don't know. So it's very bizarre. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. Just definitely something that's, to change my mind about believing that there's other things out there. When I seen that, that's when I started believing that there's definitely other things out, that are out in the world there. I mean, spirits and what have you. So
yeah.
That's my experience. I was just kind of wondering if you or anybody's ever seen anything like that, or have any ideas what that could have been.
Well, you know what? I can't. That's really compelling and very, I think, unique to you. I have told the story once before, and I'll tell it here real quickly, of driving when I was a little. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and we were going out to my grandmother's, and it was the middle of the night. It was probably a 4-state drive, so figure 13 hours in the car or something like that. And as we were driving, I looked out the window and I was wide awake because I remember seeing my father and mother sitting in the front seat, and I remember seeing the glow of the AM radio on the dashboard and the whole bit. And I saw these two little hands, these little fingers holding on outside of. Out of a window of the car, and almost like the little hands were holding on against the strong wind that was created, running along the side of the car. And these two little hands were, I watched them, and I thought, there must be a bug or something, because I thought it can't be. And there was a little face that appeared, and 8 or 9 years old, was it a night terror? Was I awake and it was a dream? I don't know. But I can tell you, I could still draw a picture of it, and the little face appeared right next to those little hands, and then suddenly the hands let go, and that little thing just disappeared. So I don't even know what to call that. Maybe we both experienced some sort of sprite or elf or something like the guest last week would have been talking about out in the woods.
Yeah, well, very bizarre, that's for sure, but that's pretty unique story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks so much. Let's get Ed, west of the Rockies, in Desert Hot Springs. Ed?
Yeah, hi, Ian.
Hi, where are you going to take us?
I stepped outside my back door, one evening, and I have a very large pepper tree off to the left. And it just happened that a blackbird flew up from under the tree and right in the middle of my vision just stopped and hesitated. And
like a hummingbird kind of stopped and hesitated?
No, but larger bird.
No, but I mean in its flight, it just was it just kind of hovering, flapping its wings?
No, it was not. That was the thing. The wings were not flapping. It just flew up and it stopped, and the
like
wings were not
stopped.
flapping. And this carried on for about 10 seconds, and I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden, then it broke into flight and flew back down and flew into the brush in the desert, and that was my UFO experience.
Well, explain that, because, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's an unidentified, flying blackbird, but I mean, in the way that it flew, it's like time froze. Did you freeze too? Did you stop movement?
I mean, it was just normal for me, but it just stopped, and the wings were not flapping, and it just was suspended in the air.
So what do you do with that? How do you process that?
That's a good question. I have no idea. So that's my UFO.
Yeah. I mean, you saw it, and you tried to explain to people right away what you saw, and you've never seen a blackbird do that before or after.
Oh, no.
Right? And it doesn't make any sense that a blackbird can do that. A hummingbird can hang in midair, but it still has to be flapping its wings to do it.
This was a larger bird. This was a black...
well, I know, I get that. But I just mean in terms of how it actually maintains being able to stand perfectly still. Very, very few birds can stay still in the air without... Right.
Yeah, right.
So,
I hadn't taken any drugs or anything, and I consider that pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing. Well, I appreciate that. What do you think it means?
Huh?
What does it mean?
I wish I knew.
We'll see if anybody else has got a thought on that then coming up. James is in Shiloh, Illinois. James, who do you know that just disappeared off the face of the earth?
Well, it started one night when we had gone out to explore a certain part of the outer area of St. Louis, Missouri, near the Missouri River. And we had seen a UFO, and it went through a bunch of different things. It jumped back and forth. It was obviously a UFO. And, the reason why I'm calling is because I just turned on the radio and heard that song about Jim Sullivan and my UFO. And it's so strange because after we saw the UFO, which I could go into detail about it, but it would just take up a lot of time, but it was very, very, very neat. And it actually had a kind of misty orange glowing gas coming off of it. And anyway, we saw a second UFO that appeared to be a completely different kind, possibly a covert spacecraft of our own in 1986. And it was stealthily trying to observe the UFO on its own, or had detected it and came in. And the next day, my friend wanted me to go out there in broad daylight. His name was David Sims. His dad was apparently I found out later, his dad had been a full bird colonel in the Air Force. And anyway, after we saw these two UFOs, the next day he wanted to go out there in broad daylight. And I said, I think I'll pass. I got to see two UFOs last night. I'm doing just fine, So, and I don't think we'll see anything in broad daylight. So I decided not to. He went out there, and he was a very...
Where's there? He went out to the edge of town, you're saying?
Well, it was past the edge of town. It was about 100 miles outside of St. Louis County. And anyway, on the Missouri River. And he went out there in broad daylight. I decided to pass because I got my fill that previous
what happened?
night. He said that when he was driving down, it was privately owned farmland, and he drove down this gravel road, and there was military helicopters, ATVs poking around with sticks in the bushes, military guys running all over the place. They, with a blowhorn, told him to cut his engine as he was coming in, and he did. They debriefed him with no name, rank, or serial number on their uniforms, and most of them were wearing camo, but the guys who were talking to him were wearing just like blue Navy type stuff with no name, rank, or serial number or anything. And he said that they told him to come back and they told him by name what my name was, and I have no idea how they knew that, to not talk about the event. And this was 1986, and I don't care. I'll tell anybody. I've told this story so many times. Anyway, he was frightened. He came to my house that after that day, had happened. He was shaking. He was nervous. He was looking around over his shoulders, and he said, look, they told me to come over here and tell you not to talk about what we saw last night. And I told him, okay, David, okay, calm down,
Right.
Well, anyway, that following week, I had gone over to his house a couple days later, and he had told me not to contact him. But I decided to think, forget that, man. I'm going to go over and I'm going to knock on his door.
Right.
I went over there, and his entire house, all the lights were off. Nobody answered the door. And weeks later, I observed his house on my own. Nobody was there. His entire family had been either relocated or something, but I never saw him again. And when I asked the neighbors about him, they kind of clammed up and said, I don't know, and just left it at that. And it was very, very peculiar.
And you never tried to get in touch with him since?
I did try to get in touch with him. I spent 3 months trying to locate him, find out where he is. And he wasn't moving. They had no for sale sign at his house. His dad, like I said, was a full-bird colonel, and he had told me that after he came back nervous. He said, look, I hadn't told you my dad is a colonel.
Right. Well,
and by the way, it wasn't just him who disappeared. It was his entire family.
Well, that certainly qualifies, James. I got to say, for a disappearance story that would rank, if you pardon the pun. I wonder whether they just disappeared into the system, and whether if you tried to track him down now, you could, based on the information you have about the family. Be kind of curious to hear what happened with the rest of that story. Where did they have to move? How long do they have to remain silent? And whether he feels free that he can talk now.
Back in 2000, now all of this is hindsight. It has taken me 8 years to ponder what has happened to me. I was abducted, but like I said, it has taken me 8 years, because when these things are happening, you're not aware of it. In 2000, I had went outside, because I'm in the country, to hang up clothing. I had just washed. I left 2 small children in the kitchen floor. One was in the walker. Another, he was about 3. He was playing with his toy. I was looking at them before I went outside to hang the clothes on the line to make sure they were safe. When I stepped out of the back door, I don't remember anything until I came, when I came back to my senses, and I didn't even know what had happened until about 6 years later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, crying like someone had just killed me. It has taken all of these years. But prior to that, I had heard a sound, and other neighbors had heard the sound in the woods. And it was an ongoing sound. It sounded as if it was a bird, but it wasn't a bird. It never ceased. And I always wanted to venture into the woods to see what it was, but the snakes and bears and everything else, and so I never went. But Ian, I'm telling you, I don't want this to happen to me again.
I don't blame you. You know, there's an interesting thread. You mentioned one thing in there that sounds so familiar with so many stories, and that's the lure of wildlife. That there are so...
No, Ian, trust me on this one. I wasn't equating one incident with the other. Totally unaware.
No, I don't think you know what I'm talking.
How long I had been gone.
I understand that. I don't think you're knowing what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in a lot of abduction cases, people say they identify that the last thing they remember was, and then it was that they were looking at a deer walking in the woods.
It didn't happen like that. We just moved into the building. And I just always heard this sound, but nobody paid any attention to it. I would kind of pay attention to it sometime, and then no. But my memory was all erased, and over the years, it's coming back. It's coming back. You can't remember what never took place. I've told the story, and people have said, "Well, did you hang the clothes?" I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember because it was nothing to remember.
Have you ever considered going to a hypnotist?
I've been to a psychiatrist.
No, to a hypnotist.
No.
See, that the belief is, and I'll leave that thought there, Sheila, is that even in rural Virginia, there's going to be somebody that does hypnotherapy for, to stop smoking or weight loss or other reasons, people who are witnesses to crimes, et cetera. And if you get a good hypnotherapist, tell them to have you walk through the circumstances of that day under hypnosis and to talk, without the superimposed, what we call it, some sort of almost like a spell that's come over your memory, and get rid of that, bypass that by just going back before that time when your brain no longer processed information or was somehow told not to process information, or however we look at that. And you just go back to what happened to you, have a hypnotherapist record it, and just have you tell that story under hypnosis and see what comes out. I think it would be very interesting.
I've got a really scary Bigfoot story that's for real, and I'll endeavor to be brief.
No, from that part of New York?
No, this was in suburban Philadelphia, in a little town I lived in called Audubon, which is 25 miles northwest of Philadelphia. And I was farther out in a town called Oaks, and I was at a gathering of friends that worked at the country club, and 2 o'clock rolled around, and I could not find a ride home. So I played soccer. This was my senior year in high school, so I decided to run home. And this was 4 o'clock on December 29th, 1980.
Wow.
And I ran, and there was a gray, milky sky. There was snow on the ground. I went up between two roads in my development called Provincetown, between Meadowlark and Mockingbird, and there's a path called the Green Path. To my left is a fence. It's 4 feet high. I'm 20 feet away. There's a towering figure with brown hair, silver tips on the hair, glowing red eyes, 8 feet tall.
I'm with you.
I screamed.
I bet.
I ran. I cursed. I went and ran to the guy's. I saw the illumination of his eyes through the lights from the outside buildings. I ran 100 yards, knocked on this guy's door, and he goes, "What do you want?" I said, "Call the cops, man." He goes, "Wait a minute. What do you want?" And I said, "You don't understand me. Call the cops now." Cops pick me up. Cop goes, "Well, why am I here?" And I said, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." And they drove me home, and the next day, I was friends with the center of the football team. We found the footprints. They were 18 inches long.
Wow. That's interesting.
The smell was indescribable. It smelled like feces, deer,
matted
skunk,
hair,
urine. Right. It was just nasty, and it grunted when it saw me. Went, and I was like, "Oh, I'm out of here. I'm gone."
You know what? First of all, you tell that story really well. So kudos to you. Most people don't tell their stories. That was, not only was it clear with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I loved your attention to detail. You got to write that down. That was really good, and you really put me in that place. So I'm up against the top of the hour clock, but that reminds me that there are other Appalachian, that Appalachian region is sort of understated when it comes to its participation in this lore and or reality. In your case, reality. So, is it possible? Cheryl is in Orange, California, on Coast to Coast. Cheryl?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, get us started for open lines. Go ahead.
Okay, there's two things I wanted to mention. Number one, since 1991, I've had firsthand experience with people who use wormholes, and I've actually caught some of them on on film. I have photographs. Cool. The second thing is the Dark Mission Themis photographs that are in that book. They are not aerial photos of Mars. In fact, they're thermal photos that were taken of a certain room right in my own home.
What? How could they take a of your? How could they confuse?
Satellite.
How could they confuse a room in your home with Mars?
Because I recognized the photograph. They were taken from me when I went to have them developed. They were inadvertently taken. They took my disc from my digital camera so that I wouldn't have the photos, and I recognized the images right off the bat.
Now, we're talking about the classic face on Mars, the dark...
No, not the face, no.
No? What are we talking about then?
I'm talking about, I wrote them down. I don't have them in front of me. The Themis, they're supposed to be, they say it's a train station. It's not a train station.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for it that there's no train stations on Mars, but that's still a story that you're saying that... that there's that the photos that we hear of is connected to what they call the dark mission. We're not Mars, but we're taken of your house. Thank you, Cheryl. Good way to get us started for Open Lines. Goes to show you right now, you never know what's going to be coming up next. Robert, Open Lines, where do you want to go with this?
Well, I'd heard a story here several months ago about there being a rumor that back in 1967 at the Jacksonville Naval Air Station Hospital that there had been genetic experiments done on infants there, and that actually there's two TV shows that are based on that, No Ordinary Family and Fringe, and the lady, one of the lead characters in Fringe, is born on November 29th of 1967 at that hospital, and so was I.
What does that tell you about you?
I'm not going to go into details, but I've had a very odd existence, and if I wrote a book about my life, I'd have to publish it as fiction. But I'm just trying to find maybe there's somebody out there that would have some more information.
Do you have special powers?
Oh, well, I'm not going to talk about that. Okay.
Well, you can't dangle that cheese in front of us. We're not going to kick your door down at home and test you.
Well, I've laid hands on people, and they recovered. I mean, broken bones that no longer had a break in it. It healed up, and there should have been calcium buildup there. And when they re-X-rayed it, there wasn't. My cousin had a compression fracture he had for many years, and I laid hands on it. And the next time, he didn't have any pain after that. And years later, he got a re-X-ray for something else and discovered there was no compression fracture.
Well, what was special about this Jacksonville hospital that they had these experiments there?
Well, I don't know. Well, see, a friend of mine had told me about this, but didn't have any specifics as far as where I could look for information about it to see if there was any validity to it. And the reason they had brought that up was some of the several things they've experienced in their life by being around me, the things they've observed. And, they like to watch a lot of science fiction stuff on television. And, they watch both those shows, and both of them are on the premise that these people were in these shows were born at that naval hospital that year, and that's where they discovered that's where they got their powers, was because the Navy had done experiments on when they were infants, when they were actually born at that hospital. And both those television shows have that as the premise of the show.
Right. No, so interesting. No, I've never heard about it. Now it's a naval station, but I was just looking it up here. It says Naval Air Station, so it's for pilots. It's yes. That's the same one we're talking about, the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, Florida, and the base hospital they have there. Okay, very good. I'll go take a look. So I'd like to see more about that. Thank you so much. So interesting.
You know what I'm saying? But there's a bunch of lies going on. It starts at the Civil War, and I'm really looking forward to your Kennedy deal tomorrow night, okay? Because it's tied into that, too. It's still ongoing.
The Transcontinental Railroad? How does that...
Purchase, okay? Trust me, 1853, why they even bought this, spent all this money on this little sliver of desolation down here. All right, just look into it. That's a hint, okay? I'll let you guys do the legwork because you all know about history, but it's the reason to the Civil War. The slavery is just a cover issue. The slavery wasn't even an issue till Gettysburg.
No. I live in Kansas, and so we know. Just if you don't know, if you're a historian, you know that Kansas was a proxy war. The bleeding Kansas was a proxy war leading up to the Civil War. It didn't just start in the issue of slavery was front and center to everything, because that's why people from Missouri, there was a proposition that said every state should be able to vote to decide whether there's going to be a slave or a free state. And Kansas developed because of people pouring in from different places. And the part of in Kansas where I live, it was all people who were free staters who came from the Northeast. And there were other parts of Kansas that were flooding in from the slave states that wanted to see the state legislature voted a slave state. So, no, it didn't start at Gettysburg, that issue. That's I don't know. I hadn't even heard that before. But, the myth of the lost cause, that doesn't start until a year after the Civil War. Up until that point, everybody was proudly saying it was always about slavery. And they're on their own books saying it's about maintaining slavery. So, not sure we're going to agree with that as a premise. But tomorrow night should be interesting. And I'd love to see a connection with that idea of the Transcontinental Railroad, though, in the Civil War. That part I've never thought about, so I'll take a look.
I love all the Chinese people. I love all the people who manufacture the genuine Ming Dynasty porcelain I have, and some that is even Neolithic. And there are copies available that look like they're decrepitly old on eBay, and so I wanted to order this book, the new and revised handbook of marks on Chinese ceramics, and I'm studying Chinese. I don't know much Chinese. I wanted the 2013 version by Gerald Davidson, so I decided I would Google it, and it's $600 for the hardback and $400 and $300 for hardbacks. It's a little overpriced. I can't afford it. Can't afford an appraiser. So I decided I was just going to get the book, and I decided I would download it free, and I found over 100 websites saying that they have the book for a free download, and I went through the whole 9 yards with every one of these websites. I put in an 80-hour week. I want everybody to know that you're going to be scammed by these websites that say they've got the book free, and you give them a credit card number, and then you find out they do not have the book at all.
No, wait. How many people do you think are going to be trying to buy a copy of an old book on Chinese ceramics?
It has nothing to do with which book it is. It's every book that you Google. It doesn't matter what book you Google.
Somebody will take your money.
The Better Business Bureau has umpteen reports on these companies. A lot of it turned out to be the same company under lots of different names, taking my money every time.
Well, don't do that again. How many times does it happen before you're going to stop doing that?
Whatever it takes to get my book on the press.
Okay.
About how it happened, because I can depend on Wells Fargo to fix it for me.
Okay, well, I hope that's always true. I hope that's always true, that Wells Fargo is willing to fix it for you. God bless you on that. Annie, you are, I bet you everywhere you go, Annie, it's like open lines wherever you go. You always have something to say, so...
I was watching this program during Christmas about Christ and his relationship with Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
Do you think there's a surviving lineage between them at all?
So this is the royal bloodline theory, the divine right of kings, that the offspring of Jesus and Mary eventually, right? Is this where you're going with that?
Absolutely, yes.
No, I don't happen to believe that. Now, here's what I do believe, and I don't, let's be very clear. Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute, period. There is nothing in the Bible that says she was a prostitute.
100%.
So she's often associated with a woman who was a prostitute, but that woman's never given a name. So we've got that. I also want to make the point that it was uncommon. It would have been an absolute aberration for a rabbi, and Jesus was a rabbi. We know that because the disciples called him that, and he was recognized as being a rabbi. It would have been completely out of the norm for him to be a rabbi and not be married.
Right.
So that part is unusual. There is nothing that's ever said specifically that it was Mary, but she is the one that is the most devoted. She is the one that appears first at every one of these events. She is the one who seems to mourn like a wife. And there's a lot of people who would say that any sort of association between the two of them has been obliterated for history.
I would have to agree with that. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah, but whether does that mean they go off in Spain or France and they have children and they go on to become kings and queens? I do not think that's. I understand the theory, but there's nothing to support it other than legacy and people who throw things together.
Speaking of disappearances, and I'm kind of foggy on the details. The show was a while ago, but it was a UFO investigator. I think George Norrie interviewed him. He's talking about a hunter that went out hunting. I think, they lived in Virginia or something, went out hunting in the mountains, not too far from the home. Didn't come back. The wife got worried. So they sent a search party out after so much time. Finally ended up finding the guy miles away, naked in some thicket, and they found his boot or something in a tree like 2 miles away. I mean, just very bizarre. And the authorities would not give up the autopsy to the the siblings or the family, and
you think they'd be required? They'd be required to by law or code that they have to do that.
That's what was strange about it. I mean, I've heard about a lot of UFO abductions, but the night before there was some strange object in the sky, and it was just, I wish I could, the hour is late, but I wish I could recall the actual show. I think it was on a couple months ago, but very bizarre. And the investigator that was getting interviewed still didn't have all the details, but, he was contacted by the wife of the gentleman that disappeared, and it was just pretty much found stripped naked in a thicket, and I think they did get the autopsy or the toxicology back after a while, and it said it was cocaine or something like that, but this guy had no history of drug abuse. And
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It just so happens by coincidence, Grayson, that George's producer, Tom Danheiser, is on duty tonight. So I'm going to ask Tom to look that up and see whether I can't get at least some of those details and fill in those blanks. But I appreciate the heads up.